planning process. Okay, we got it. The reason you want to keep that forefront is that you don't want to stray from the mission and the vision. That is what you're empowered to do. So you want your work product, your strategic planning, to reflect that. So that's why you use the mission, the vision, and the values as a starting point. You want to take a look at that early on in the process, because perhaps over time, your mission doesn't really articulate all that you do. So it may need to be altered to properly reflect the work that you do. The vision may be a little longer. The values may have, you may have added some new values. So you really want to put all of those three things right up front as you begin the planning process. The third phase is to assess the situation. Where are we now? And I want to talk a little bit about that, because you're not only interested in what's going on internally, it is really vitally important for all of us to have an understanding of what's going on in the environment around us. So we often encourage nonprofits to do what we call an environmental scan, where we reach out to an organization's collaborators, their donors, their funders, their constituency. It might even be their clients, to ask a series of questions about how the organization's doing, what could be better, what's really strong, what isn't as strong, what's the good news, what's the bad news. I have a whole list of things, and Hugh has my contact information, so I'm happy to share that with you offline. Whole list of questions that we use when we do an external scan to just figure out what your organization needs to focus in on. Phase 4 is to agree on priorities. Where do we want to be? Where are we going? The fifth is to write the strategic plan around the programs, the capacity of the organization to articulate and manage those programs, and the financing. The phase 6 is to implement the strategic plan. And finally, phase 7 is to monitor, evaluate, and update it. Remembering always that the strategic plan is not a document that's etched in stone. It's a document that's alive. It can change over time. It's possible that as you start to implement some of the goals and strategies, you may find that they're not as clear-cut as you wanted. You may need to move in a different direction. It's not reflecting the kinds of things that your organization had hoped it would do. So you may want to alter the plan. You may want to amend it. Just know that you can do that. It's not written in stone. Just because you decided in 2024 that you're going to do X, it may be that in 2025 things have changed and you want to take a look at how you're doing things. Planning tips. Make it clear, make it achievable. Don't reach for the moon if you really don't think you can reach it, which isn't to say don't think big, but don't overestimate what you can achieve in the time period. Always include action steps, due dates, and who's responsible, because for the plan to be implemented, you need a plan. You need to know what the time frame is, and you need to know who's responsible for making sure that moves forward. Oftentimes, Connie and I have seen strategic plans that don't have due dates and don't have action steps, and we wonder how that plan's going to be implemented and how it's going to be monitored. And be realistic with your tasks, your timelines, and assignments. And always remember that if something takes a little longer, adjust the timeline to reflect the fact that it is taking a little longer. But don't do away with the timelines, because that creates that sense of urgency to complete your strategic plan's actions. And remember to revisit and update the plan regularly. We suggest that it be a topic of discussion in a board meeting, maybe once every 2 months. Sometimes it's better to do it once a month. You will know what works best for your organization. So I would implement it in the way that best fits you. Next slide, please. Okay, remember when I said you start from the mission, the vision, the values? This is sort of a visual of what that is in a strategic plan. The mission is the guiding principle. You include the vision, the values, and your target markets because these are the tools that you need to be able to implement your programs as well as your strategic plan. To that, you're going to add the environmental analysis that we talked about, the environmental scan. What is it that we learned about our program? What is it that we learned about our mission and how people view that? The difference between SWOT and SOAR. SWOT is an analysis that emphasizes weaknesses and threats, while the SOAR analysis focuses on your strengths and how they can be leveraged to seize opportunities. I think you need a little of both. I do. That information of your internal strengths and vulnerabilities and what your collaborative partners have done and what they say about the work that you do, that information needs to be wrapped into the goals that you establish for your programs, your marketing and your outreach programs, your management and your governance, all of those issues. And your strategic plan will probably have 4 or 5 sections that deal with programs, marketing, outreach, management, governance, maybe even facilities if you own a building. And then moving one step over, your objectives, action steps, and are included after you put your goals together. What are the action steps? How are you going to get from point A to point E to create a new program? Work that out in action steps within your strategic plan. Who's going to do that? When is that going to be done? So this is just a visual that you can use for the framework of how strategic planning works. And next slide, please. This is an example of the planning process. And it's a really good tool. I would encourage you to take a look at it and see if it's going to serve your purposes. This would be how you would run your first strategic planning session, how to break it out, what comes first, second, and third. You'll notice that there are a few breaks in here. You'll notice that it's not a long term. We suggest you start at 10 in the morning and you run until 4 in the afternoon. Our experience has been that 6 and 8 hour days of strategic planning tend to peter out towards the end of the 4th and 5th hour. So that's why we suggest that you do a lot of big thinking in this 4-hour session and then break up into different subcommittees that will address each part of each aspect of your strategic plan. And those committees can meet at their leisure in 2-hour sessions to hammer out the action steps for how they're going to achieve the goal in which they're working on, such as marketing or fundraising or such. So you begin the day with an overview of the agenda, the purpose of the day, introductions, and so forth. Then you move to the mission statement review. And here is where you take a look at the mission statement. What still resonates with you? What still is working? What may be open to revision? And have a conversation about what those revisions might be and what is really working. Identify those things in this step. Now, if the mission needs to be reworked, you might want to talk about some of the important big picture items, but leave the wordsmithing to a small committee that will meet offline, simply because this is a big conversation and wordsmithing sometimes gets us caught in the weeds when we really need to keep the big picture in mind. Once the mission has been discussed and you have a sense of whether it needs to be revised or not, and usually the revisions are not huge, it's just tweaking. Then you move on to the core values, purpose, and market. What difference do we want to make? What are the core values that are key to how we operate? Ideally, who benefits primarily, secondarily? What are the important pieces of our organization, and how are we going to use those pieces in the design of our plan? So you would ask these questions: to what ends are we working? What difference do we want to make? What core values are key to how we operate ideally? And ideally, who benefits primarily and secondarily? I think this is an important piece to keep in mind, because when we fundraise for our organizations, what the donor wants to hear is how their funds are going to impact on the clients that you serve. Donors want to know the difference that your mission is going to make for that client. They want to know what difference their investment in your organization is going to make. They want to be able to wrap their arms around what their money is going to do, how they're helping to make a difference. So it becomes, when you think of your strategic plan in terms of fundraising, you really want to think in terms of the impact on the client, as to the services that are important and vital to making a difference for those individuals. Then after all that, you want to take a break for at least 15 minutes. When you come back, we recommend that you talk about the environmental scan, the external trends. What is it that's going on in the world at large? And what is it that's going on in your organization? What did you learn from the environmental scan that you need to address as an organization? Is the board as well known in the community as it needs to be? Is your organization well known in the community as it should be? Are your programs understood and supported? Does the donor feel that their investment in your organization is making a difference? Does your message tell people who you are and what you do? And don't underestimate this. We worked with organizations who were shocked to learn that their name, the name of their organization, didn't really tell the community who they are. And their mission didn't really articulate in a very clear way what they did. So these are important lessons. This is important information to take in and think about, because your mission statement is very important. It's an important way to articulate very quickly who you are and what you do, what you want to accomplish, what your mission is. So it's real important to know whether that message is out there, is getting heard. Okay, so the external trends are very important. The collaborative scan. What organizations do you work with now? You might want to take a look at what organizations you should be working with in the future. Who do you want to partner with? Oftentimes you will hear foundations say, who are your collaborators? How are you working cooperatively with other organizations? And the reason for that is oftentimes organizations do the same thing. And it's important to be able to articulate the difference that you make as an organization as opposed to other organizations. So your mission needs to be very clear. Who you partner with can be a way to boost the visibility of your organization as well as the group that you're partnering with. And it also creates more hands on deck. It creates a stronger team to address the huge issues that face so many of the clients that we serve. Time for another break around 12:15 and have lunch. Be sure and feed people all during the process. I recommend chocolate as well. When you reconvene, you want to take a look at internally the organization's strengths and your vulnerabilities. This is the typical strength, weaknesses, opportunities, challenges, threats. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to highlight your strengths. You want to use your strengths to the extent that you can to address the threats and to overcome your weaknesses. And you want to see the opportunities as a way of growing your mission, expanding the work that you do in the community. How can you take advantage of what's going on currently to make your organization more visible, stronger, better at fundraising, better at the work that you do? So you'll ask questions like, where are we strong? Where are we vulnerable? Within our programs and services, within our administration and management, within marketing and outreach, within board and with governance. And sometimes, most times, actually, I would say, it's really important for your board to have done a self-assessment of itself at least once a year. There is a wonderful template that is available to you that was put together by the Chester County Community Foundation. You can find it on their website. It may be something that you want to download and share with your executive director and your board to consider doing a board assessment to find out what it is that your board needs to do its job better, what they need to know, what they're not doing well, and how they can get the help they need to do it better. It just tees you up to be a better performing board. Then you move on to clarifying and putting into priority what the initiatives are. So based on the discussion of the day, what do we need to do, to accomplish, to feel successful in the short term and in the long term? And as a group, you make those decisions about what are the long-term goals, what are the short-term goals, not in the weeds, still very big picture, because those small subcommittees that will meet after your big meeting, and not the same day, but a week or 2 weeks later, they'll work out what the action steps are. But the goal of having everyone together is that you get the information from everyone sitting around the table. Everyone has input, which also helps build a team and helps buy-in in implementing the project. Then you move to next planning steps, the long term. What you want to do is draft the day's discussion into a brief written plan. In the short term, you want to do a fiscal budget review, discussion, and modifications. Because what you will find is that some of the programs that you want to institute are going to cost a little money. Well, how much? So you need to factor that in to the final draft of your strategic plan. And then the day concludes with the group having divided up into small subcommittees, and then they determine how they're going to meet, when they're going to meet, and there's a time frame for everyone coming back together to put those steps together. Next slide, please. Okay. So just some thoughts. As you're planning, think about what's motivating our nonprofit to plan now, so soon. What is the it that's making us move forward right now? And include that in your planning process. You might want to ask, how much time will planning research and planning deliberations require? Over what time frame? How much time will the board, the senior staff, program staff, constituents, how much time are they going to put into this? And are they ready to do that? You want to reserve enough time to do an external review of your community partners, as we mentioned earlier. You might want to add the question of what is the value of bringing on a consultant? What's it going to cost? Is it worth the cost? I guess what I would say about that, and in true disclosure, I'm a consultant, but what what a consultant brings to this is an outside view with a great deal of experience behind that outside view, but also in doing that environmental scan, a consultant who has no ties to your organization other than being hired to do this work can elicit information from donors and other nonprofits in a way that makes them feel comfortable, because what they say to us will not be attributed to them. So the information coming back won't be shaded in a way to keep relationships or not annoy anyone or insult the executive director, because the person who's gathering this information is someone who's coming with a clear slate and doesn't have an axe to grind, just simply wants to get the best information possible. And that's why a consultant can help provide you with the really important real information that you need to have. It isn't something you can do on your own. How are you going to communicate the final plan to the public? What is the plan for that? And when can the nonprofit readily commit the time and the funds? So those are all the kinds of things that you want to be thinking about as you plan your strategic plan. So those are the slides. What questions do you have? Okay. Have any of you done strategic plans?
I have a question.
Yes.
Greg Nardi from the Chester County Bar Association. First, thanks for spending time with us today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I think when I've done a little bit of planning in the past, one of the challenges I've seen is that, like, truly understanding the community, understanding the environment, right? I've seen some people spend their whole lives like trying to tackle some pretty wicked problems in the community. And how do you communicate, right? If you have new board members who maybe are committed to the cause in general, but really don't know everything that's behind the problems, everything that's behind solutions that have been tried before. I mean, that for some people, that's like a lifetime of studying for them. How do you cram all of that in 45 minutes? Or do you have to go in with expectations that you're just really hitting the wave tops and you're never going to help them understand the environment if they don't care?
That's a really good question. What we like to do is we write up a report of what we learned in the environmental scan. We write it up, we share it with the executive director. The executive director then makes whatever edits are appropriate and passes it on to the board. The board receives it at a board meeting prior to the strategic planning phase and has a chance to review it, read it, discuss it as a board. Is that answering your question, or are you looking at something, were you asking something else?
No, I think that helps. I mean, I guess, yeah, so we're not really looking at the board to add to the environmental scan. We're just feeding them, not asking them for input.
No, because the board is part of the environmental scan. We will ask, how do you know anyone on the board? How do you feel about the board? Do you feel that the board is helping to expand, expand the mission and so forth? So the board's part of it.
Yeah.
One process that we went through in a large organization was going out to the external stakeholders and identifying donors, supporters, political, whatever, and then going out to them and getting an environmental, as Corrine had pointed out, there's some questions you go out and ask, and you collect the data, and then you tabulate that, and so it's trying to go as far as possible to what your externals really include. And if you can get some other organizations that know of you and know what you do, the people who are affected by you, who benefit from your mission, all of those things, getting that whole environmental scan rather than just relying on a small basis of internal sources for that.
That's a really good point, Tom. And I love the idea of a political, tapping into the political culture as well, because very often the kinds of mission initiatives that we focus on really impact the political culture as well, homelessness, health, and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's a really good point. It also helps educate the political arena as to the importance of the work that we're doing and how they could be more helpful.
Corrine, there's a question in the chat. If we were to plan to hire a consultant, can you give a sense of what fees may be charged for this service?
Well, yes, I can do that. And my cat is just about to join us.
Oh, my cat's joining me down here, and I was the one who asked the question. So, black cat just went across my screen too.
See, there you go. There you go. You know, there are all kinds of external scans. You can spend thousands of dollars. You can spend hundreds of dollars. My suggestion, my answer to that question depends on really how many people you want to interview, because that drives the cost of the environmental scan. Usually the way Connie and I work it is that we meet with the organization and they tell us what it is they want us to do. And we go away and say, in order to get that kind of information, who is it that we should be talking to? And we make a list of people that we think we should be talking to. We go back to the organization and we say, this is what we think. These are the people who should be approached in the environmental scan. They might make some changes. They might make some additions, some extractions. And it is the number of people that we're going to interview that's going to drive the cost of the plan. That really is one of the more expensive pieces to the plan. So in a strategic plan, if you're going to do 20, 10 to 20 interviews, 10 interviews, maybe 2,000 or 3,000, maybe, or 4, because then you've got to factor in the cost of all of the subcommittee meetings and all of the committee meeting, the big committee meetings, writing up the plan and so forth. It's really hard for me to say. It could cost anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000. And if you're working with a really large firm, it'll cost even more, because their rates are probably a lot higher than the smaller consulting firms.
And
Okay.
Corrine, did I hear you correctly saying that for the environmental scan, you don't talk to the board because they're part of the environment? Does that mean you also don't talk to staff?
For
the interviews, I mean.
Yes, not for the interviews, because that's very costly. We might meet with the board collectively. We might meet with the staff collectively and have a conversation. However, we'll meet with the board if you want. Yeah, we'll do that. But we often find that getting the external information and then looking at the board self-assessment is helpful enough. Now, there are cases where there are board members who clearly have more background and insight than others. And we would in that case want to talk to them if they have been with the organization for a very long time and can shed some light on, let's say, the issue of an executive director high turnover. That might be something that we'd want to take a look at, and the board could speak to that. So it really depends. The way Connie and I work is that we're very focused on what it is the organization wants, needs, and how it wants to, what it wants to achieve. And we work around those issues and target those issues.
There is one other comment in the chat, and just want to ask, Andrea, do you want to make any further comments on your current experience going through a strategic planning with the Chester County Food Bank?
Sure. I think Corrine is on point. We actually went out for an RFP. So we put an RFP together to go out for bids to engage a consultant. So that way the consultant knew right up front what we were expecting and what we needed to occur. we obviously needed to survey a lot of people in the community because we serve a large population across the county and very diverse organizations. So we spent a lot of time in the discovery phase of getting that feedback. And we have a board committee for strategic planning. And so then after those discovery phase conversations, we did do targeted interviews with government donors and other key people, as you talked about. And now we're in the process of kind of working with our senior leadership and our board together to work through the big questions around how do our vision, mission, and values line up with what the expectations of the community are, and to reevaluate. So it's definitely what you're talking about. I think it depends on the size of your organization, really what you're looking for. If it can just be a shorter term, then, I mean, we're into 4 months into this process.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you're a big organization and you impact an enormous number of lives, Andrea. So it's good that you're taking the time and really, really digging deep here. Very important. Good job. Any other questions? Anything that surprised you about strategic planning? Okay. Hugh has my contact information. If there's anything that I can answer for you or anything you'd like to know, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to help. Questions, concerns, whatever.
I did put your contact information in the chat.
Mhm.
Also, the deck that was covered today, that'll be within 24 hours. That'll be up on our website at the Community Foundation. You can just find it under. We have all of our lists of our monthly presentations, and so this latest deck will be included there. Just search for the page on our website. You should find it pretty easily. If anybody does have any problem locating it or has any other questions or needs additional help, please just reach out to me at the foundation, and I'm happy to help you with whatever you might need. So I think we're good. Any other questions we can answer for anybody?
Mm-mm.
Well,
This has been
great.
great. Thank you.
Thank you
for
very
coming.
much for your time. Thanks for
Thank you.
joining us today.
Thank you. Take
Thank
good
you.
care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.